This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everyone, to this edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, some injuries coming out of War Games, another WWE announced team shakeup, and some changes to WWE on Netflix. Of course, we're going to take a look at Survivor Series and all the happenings going around the wonderful world of wrestling, helping me break it all down, sort it all out, and pin this stuff to the mat. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
War Games. It was interesting to watch. I thought that the entire show definitely, had it served its purpose, but some of the matches didn't deliver in regards to kind of aesthetically pleasing when you look at it. I think the thing that many people are talking about is you just got to reduce the clock like maybe a minute. There's a lot of lull in these War Game matches, and I just think that there can be improvements. But overall, I thought WWE did themselves some wonders with a PLE that I thought was fairly well received.
Yeah, this is normally a B level pay-per-view. This one seemed like they kind of held back a little bit. Like they didn't give all of the cool things that they normally would, all the bells and whistles. And word on the street is they're really loading up for moving to Netflix. They're really loading up for really the next 140 days where they're going to have a lot going on. That basically puts you out to WrestleMania. So you're going to have the Royal Rumble, you're going to have WrestleMania, you've got the shift to Netflix, and kind of all of this stuff in between. And you kind of seen it with Monday Night. I felt like Monday Night Raw was a really, really good episode, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as soon as we get through these Survivor Series results. But overall, I thought as a pay-per-view, like you said, this served the purpose. This helped either further storylines or help change a couple of things around so you can kind of shift it another direction. Some of the stuff kind of coming out of it, we're going to have some continuation of storylines, and that's probably where we start. You had Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io Sky, and Bayley defeat the team of Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. This all happens when Rhea Ripley pins Liv Morgan. So like I said, some continuation of stories. This story will continue. We'll have Rhea continuing to chase Liv for that title. Overall, I thought this was a bit of a fun match. I thought Nia Jax was a little bit clunky in it, but anytime you get to see Io Sky put the trash can on her head and go and jump off the top of the cage, I think it's fantastic. You also had dueling moonsaults between Io Sky and Tiffany Stratton, which I thought was really, really cool. The women's match, I'll say it delivered. Could it have been better? Yes, but overall I thought it was well done. What did you think of the women's War Games match?
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising that the biggest critique online came in the form of people wondering what was going on with Nia Jax. She kind of made the match where she became the focal point for some of the things she was doing, and like you said, it was clunky. So it was unusual, but I definitely thought the high spots were there. I think the thing that also caught my attention was, the women wanted to get a little aggressive with the weapons, but it just did not come across performance-wise as something that was a little bit more believable. So it's delicate because typically women don't use these kind of things in matches, and so it just comes across looking. It doesn't protect the business, the best way to put it, by having the women sometimes use the weapons in that fashion. But overall, I could understand why they chose to have the faces win. But I just thought that the bigger stars, and that's why I predicted it. I thought the bigger stars, in regards to who was a little bit, maybe not to put it that way, but maybe the team that needed it more would have been Tiff Stratton, Nia Jax, based on how everything went. But overall, the match was okay. But it's unfortunate it did not live up to what they did last year.
No, it definitely did not. And look, I think, when was the last time you seen a toilet seat used? I thought that was interesting. That was cool. Something different. You haven't really seen that done often, much less recently. So I thought that was pretty cool. I did like the tease with Tiffany Stratton in the middle of the match where she broke out her briefcase. It was hiding in a trash can. And you had Nia Jax laid out. You had Liv Morgan laid out. And she was trying to make a decision. Raquel Rodriguez basically kind of comes in and is like, "What are you doing? Like, we got a match going on here." So I thought it was cool. Just another tease, right? Like this is pending, and this might be one of those things that they take it all the way up to the very last day that they can cash this thing in. But again, Tiffany Stratton with her briefcase, it's always going to be part of the storyline. So I thought it was well done. Next, we got our big surprise. This came early in the card. Nakamura ends up defeating LA Knight via pinfall to win the U.S. Championship. We kind of talked about it last week. I don't think either one of us necessarily thought Knight was going to lose his title, but if you need to make a title change and you're looking up and down this card, I guess this is the spot where it makes sense. Nakamura is now your U.S. champ. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with that title. How shocked were you that Nakamura came away with the belt after you and I kind of discussed it, and there was this possibility that he could leave with the belt, but I think overall you and I both thought that Knight would retain, and this would build to a set of 3 matches between these guys.
Yeah, it's the company gave Nakamura the push. It just sucks because on the other side of it, we were looking at LA Knight like that was like kind of like a really shitty run, and
it was a shitty run. It was not good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because now you're starting to see WWE flip titles a lot faster than what we typically are used to, and I think that a lot of people were a little bit disappointed to see that. But wrestling-wise, you can understand Nakamura is a beast. He's been there now, 3-time U.S. champion. You want to elevate him, but I think you could have still did that by having Knight win, but at the same token, have Shinsuke Nakamura destroy him and continue the feud so that if he wants to win it, you can get a bigger moment at the Royal Rumble. But you know, it's just unfortunate because people really were invested in LA Knight. They liked the character. They liked to see him have success. And to give him a title and then just less than 4 months, it's one of those deals where it's interesting because I'm curious now how Nakamura is going to handle the rest of his run because it's kind of been up and down. And I think it reached a crescendo with a match at AJ Styles at WrestleMania, but it's kind of just been up and down. And it just didn't. Basically, Nakamura is a name based on stuff he's done in the past, but I don't know if they did enough to really warrant, other than he's back and he's a badass, to give him a title. But
dude, he's been back for like 2 weeks, and all of a sudden he's a champion. Like,
back in 2 weeks, yeah, exactly. Now you're a champion. So we'll see how it plays out moving forward.
Next match was Braun Breaker. He defeated Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser via pinfall to retain his Intercontinental title. I thought this was a good match. I thought you had 3 guys who kind of all played their part. Sheamus being the bruiser, Braun Breaker kind of being that tweener, he's a little bit of a speedster, but he's got power. And then Ludwig Kaiser being the conniving speedster, the guy who's kind of on the outside trying to outthink everybody. I thought this was well done. I thought everybody kind of got their work in and got to show some stuff. I think this was really, really good. I think coming out of this match, Kaiser really helped get himself over. Now, he didn't win, but he helped get himself over because he showed that he can go in there and he can work with the likes of a Hall of Famer like Sheamus, because I think Sheamus will go into the WWE Hall of Fame, go and work with the likes of a rising star, with a guy that the company feels that they're going to build around in the future in Braun Breaker. And he was a dude who really held his own here. What did you think of Kaiser's performance in this match?
Yeah, everybody. I thought I put it as match of the night. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Braun Breaker, my goodness, you just got to look at him. You just got to see this character on the screen. I thought Sheamus as well, banger after banger. I like the spot where Kaiser pulled out. I think it was Sheamus had the chance for the pin, and then Kaiser broke it up. I thought that was great. I thought he held his own, and he really has been, clearly we all know him from his work with Gunther, but he has started to work on his character, and the WWE has given him opportunities to showcase a little bit what he's about. And seeing him talk with Braun Breaker in episodes of Raw have been awesome too. So I just think that Kaiser can be a character that can be utilized as a solid mid-card guy.
Kaiser says, I am more than just Tiffany Stratton's boyfriend. I am this dude. Again, I thought he came out looking absolutely fantastic. It was a really, really good match. Our next match was Gunther defeating Damian Priest to retain his World Heavyweight Championship. Now, this came with the help of Finn Balor. Gunther, obviously not wanting the help of Finn Balor, ends up hitting Finn Balor after Finn Balor hits a coup de grace on Damian Priest on the outside. All that being said, Gunther still takes advantage of the opportunity, pins Priest, gets out with his title. So now this puts us in a bit of a weird spot because is Damian Priest, Finn Balor, is their story going to continue? Or are we going to kind of get a little bit of a preview of what we've seen on Monday Night Raw where Finn Balor and Gunther are going to now enter into a storyline? So to me, it kind of feels like we're on the verge of moving past this Damian Priest, Finn Balor. I really was hoping this would be done. I feel like we are kind of in the final leg of that. And to springboard off of that, we're going to go Finn Balor, Gunther. Are you interested in a Finn Balor, Gunther storyline?
It's intriguing, right? I thought that for the match, it was a hardcore, like traditional match. I thought that kind of harkened back to the days of the past. So I thought it was the way in which it was placed, the psychology of the match. I enjoyed it. The involvement of Finn Balor, clearly with the Judgment Day and Damian Priest, you understand that there's always going to be a history there, and the idea of Finn Balor wanting to right the wrongs and have Damian Priest lose, I can get it. But yeah, it's interesting, but it just stinks because nobody believes that Finn Balor belongs to be able to have a realistic chance to win. So what's the purpose? I mean, clearly Finn Balor wants to be a champion, but I would say you have, I believe, the tag belts. You might want to defend it once, more than once every 200 days. You might want to focus on that. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, Finn Balor's a tag champ. I forgot because Raw doesn't ever really showcase them. Like, what happened? Like, what is it, like a career-setting moment where we're going to retire the belts and nobody ever wrestles with them? So I just think that, I don't believe that Finn Balor is world championship material right now based on how he's used. It's kind of like you're firmly in the faction now, and all you've done is been feuding with the guy that was in your faction. So it just hasn't been enough to prove to me that he's worthy of stepping in the ring with Gunther right now. But it just feels like they need somebody.
Well, maybe over the next couple of weeks, you'll change your mind. Word on the street is they're supposed to give Finn a monster push coming up. So I don't know what they're going to do with the tag belts, but the word is he's going to get a monster push. I don't know if that means he becomes your new world heavyweight champ, but they do like the work he's been doing. They like what he's done in the back, and they're going to reward him with a push. And so it sounds like we're going to jump off with Gunther, and we'll see where this goes. But keep an eye on it. Like I said, that's the word on the street. That's the rumor floating around the mill. Our main event comes, and it is Roman Reigns, the Usos, Sami Zayn, and CM Punk taking on the New Bloodline with Bronson Reed. I thought this was a fun match. I thought this was a good match. I thought there was some interesting stuff that took place in the cage, especially when CM Punk was getting ready to leave the cage, and Roman put his hand up and said no, and he sends out Sami Zayn. There were parts in this match where CM Punk was on the ground and Roman Reigns would not help him up. Roman Reigns really didn't even acknowledge him. And really and truly, it felt like this match was kind of the backdrop for whatever is building between CM Punk and Roman Reigns and whatever the favor is that CM Punk has for Paul Heyman. The rest of this match was just kind of, I guess, tapestry for all of that. In the end, Roman Reigns, the Usos, Sami Zayn, and CM Punk defeat the Bloodline and Bronson Reed. This all happens as Solo's in the middle of the ring, and Roman allows everybody to hit their move, whether it's an Uso splash, it's a haluva kick, it's the go to sleep, or it's Roman's spear to basically take out Solo. Roman ends up pinning Solo in the middle of the ring, and that was how you closed. That was how you ended. The crowd was happy. The crowd was excited. What did you make of the main event, and what did you make of the story that is seeming to build around Roman Reigns and CM Punk?
Yeah, it was really well done the next night on Raw to kind of take it to the next spot. But the match itself, it delivered. I thought everybody got their stuff in. Clearly, everybody kind of had a feel that, there's always a challenge when everyone kind of knows and expects that the OG Bloodline was going to win, but you still have a match that was intriguing, a little bit aggressive, and I liked how everybody in the ring did their stuff. CM Punk is looking good, after the injury, so that's always a good sign. Looks to be in phenomenal shape, moving okay. Clearly not as fast, more methodical, but hey, it's all good. But the closing scene I thought was awesome, and I like to see the continuation of Jay and Jimmy Uso, what this means, Sami Zayn. But I thought, yeah, I agree with you. The best visual was Solo in the middle of the ring, and everybody's like, all right, we get to do this. And it was kind of like here's your punishment for the decisions that you've made. And boom, everybody gets a little bit of retribution on Solo Sikoa. So all you can say is that match delivered, and it put an end to a pay-per-view a little bit longer. But again, I thought that what was cool too, another subtle moment, was when CM Punk gets into the cage, and then Roman Reigns, CM Punk wanted to go out, and then Roman Reigns holds him back, and it's like, whoa, and somebody else goes out there. So
send Sammy out.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an intriguing moment, and you thought, well, what's going to happen? What's this mean? So it was really good, a good pay-per-view. But I'll say this: I think one aspect that you sometimes don't, account for or can't control is the crowd. I thought the crowd in this one was not as hot. They were okay, but not as hot as traditional Canadian crowds. You know what I mean? Like the Montreal, Toronto crowds, I thought brought a lot more heat in their recent shows that they've had in Canada. Vancouver was cool, but I thought that they were maybe a little bit less than, they didn't deliver as much as I thought they could.
You think maybe the time of the start of this, because this was earlier.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, this
6?
started at 6.
Yeah.
So, in Vancouver, that's what, I think it's 4 hours, 3-hour difference.
3.
So yeah, 3 o'clock. So I mean, it's a bit of an early start time for a wrestling pay-per-view. Now, I think you and I would both love that.
Yeah.
But I still think that's a bit of an early start time for a wrestling pay-per-view. So maybe that hampered it.
Yeah, maybe it's possible. And it's interesting, right? The WWE and their friends at the UFC have to make sure that, hey, we don't run into the same kind of stuff in shows, and we don't, have issues or,
not competing against each other.
We're not going to compete against each other. So that was interesting. But I liked, clearly a 6 p.m. pay-per-view is not a bad thing, even on the East Coast.
Most definitely. And something you said that I wanted to touch on, the ending shot where everybody has their one up in the air, except for CM Punk. He's got his go to sleep. That is something that's a still shot, and they keep referencing it. So there's something there. So just pay attention to that. When we go to check the card, Jock gets the point. Due to the women's War Games match, I extend my lead from 3 to 4. Currently, it's 11.5 to 7.5. Now, all of this brings us to Monday night. And I think this is one of the better Raws that we've had in a long time. And most of this Raw was built and centered around the New Day. And we got a little bit of a New Day swerve. What did you think about how WWE had us going one way and hit us with another, with Kofi and Xavier turning on Big E, who offered to come back and manage the two while they kind of worked through and figured out if he could be cleared to medically return and how he could come back and kind of soften some of whatever these hard feelings were. What did you make of this? Because this was different. All of a sudden, you now have Kofi taking more of the Xavier role, where they are now full-blown heels and getting a little bit lippy and getting mouthy and kind of talking down to Big E.
Yeah, it was interesting. Just on a side note, it was funny. In my schedule, typically I tape Raw and then I watch it Tuesday morning because it's a little bit later in the schedule. But I had a chance Monday to watch it live. And it was funny because the kid watches it and the wife was kind of passively watching. And she's like, man, this show's, where's the wrestling? It's like a bunch of talking. You had like a 20-minute opening promo with CM Punk and everybody going through and having a long promo. And then you had the long-ass promo with the New Day. And the kid was like, are they going to wrestle? And it was kind of funny. And for me, it was actually a little bit refreshing because the pay-per-view was all hardcore wrestling. So it was interesting. It was kind of like the soap opera show, but it set the tone. Now, it was definitely a swerve. I thought that, Big E's coming back. Maybe that was going to solve it. I'm like, oh, this is good. I thought for a second, maybe when they officially turned, hell, maybe he's not cleared, but a bump would have been sweet if they would have like super kicked him, or they just would have said boom, But I thought that it was a great swerve to turn the New Day heel finally, and I think everybody was, to use Big E was a great way to get the crowd against Kofi and Xavier. They said, hey, you now are coming back. We needed you a while back, and I thought, which was a great way to get heat, was the guys saying, other guys have been hurt. They came back. What about you? Why didn't you care? And then the line of the night is, you chose your girlfriend over us. And that was, a definitely heat drawer. So it's going to be intriguing. It's going to be fun. And it's a new entity now to pay attention to, is the heel New Day. What are they going to do? Who are they going to go after? And hell, I mean, it makes sense, go after Finn, go after the tag belts, and Finn JD versus the New Day heel. I think it'd be, you could have some fun, or you could do a little bit of rough shot moments. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But yeah, it was a swerve, and but at the same time, I also would have liked it if they would have broke up too. I would have liked it if one of the two, Xavier or Kofi, would have turned on each other. But in the end, they're reunited in their battle against Big E in the WWE.
Yeah, and look, you have to remember too, New Day originally, when they were going to start out, they weren't supposed to be power or positivity. They weren't supposed to be happy-go-lucky. They were supposed to be heels. So they're kind of returning to their roots. As much as everybody doesn't think they necessarily have this in their back pocket, because they've always been baby faces, and they've been one of the best babyface acts, they were originally supposed to be bad guys. And they've got this. And so it's just them kind of going back to where they came from. I think this is going to be interesting. I think this will be fun. This will be a good way to really freshen up a tag team that has, I think, done a great job with one gimmick. And they've kind of evolved that gimmick, but it's been the same gimmick for years now. This is a good way to freshen it up, and it's a good way to try some new stuff. Now, I do want to throw a rumor in there. There is a rumor that Big E is medically cleared to come back, that he is able to come back and wrestle. His neck has fused, and he's able to come in. What are your thoughts on Big E coming back and basically challenging and taking out members of the New Day, or the New Day, after they become tag team champs?
Ooh, yeah, no, it'll be interesting always to see when a character comes back, what they do for them, and what his role would be. I like the idea of, Big E as a manager. Maybe you do the Hurt Syndicate part 2, but except do it right, where Big E finds some talent. Big E and the Street Profits, Big E and other characters, Big E and Trick Williams, fun stuff. You could do some things with a face of a company that's lighthearted, but it's interesting because does he come back more rugged? Does he end up doing some things? It'll be interesting to see what his character looks like moving forward. But it was good to see him. But it was interesting because 4 years he looked like he aged quite a bit. Like the weight loss maybe just didn't do his look the best. You know what I mean? He looked tired. He looked a little bit, and that's good acting too, to kind of reveal the devastation of the decision that the New Day made. But hey, as long as he's healthy, most importantly, it is crazy now that Ridge Holland is the biggest heel in NXT, and it just stinks because what could have been had he not been dropped on his head, man. It's just scary to think about. But you always hope that these characters, when they decide to come back, you hope that they don't do further damage, because when you mess with the head and neck area, it's always serious.
Yeah, for sure. How many guys have we seen that their careers have ended early because of those head and neck injuries? So hopefully, if he is cleared, he's in good shape and he's able to come back. Him looking a little bit weathered, I look like we've talked about it with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman does a great job of really letting his appearance go, depending on what the status of the OG bloodline is. So this is probably something playing into where the New Day is, but something just to kind of add to this rumor. There's this clip floating around of Paul Heyman basically addressing Big E and basically telling him how big he could be, but he has to leave the New Day. So that's kind of feeding into, I think, this rumor that Big E could come back and he could challenge the New Day and could become maybe bigger than those two guys combined. So we'll see what happens. Big name that did come back, something that was a little bit expedited according to reports. Drew McIntyre is back and looking to take out the OG bloodline. There was a back screen snippet where Jay got taken out, and they were trying to figure it out. They thought it was Seth Rollins, and that bled into how the show opened. You talked about it with CM Punk and Seth Rollins basically going back and forth with each other, having Jay and Sammy come out to kind of break that up. That later on led into a match between Sammy and Seth Rollins for the main event. As that match is going on, Seth Rollins is trying to convince Sami Zayn that it was not him who took out Jay, that he's not the guy. This leads to a moment where Sami has a moment of clarity and believes Seth Rollins, only for Seth to roll him up, get the win, get out of the ring, and then there's a hooded figure who shows up, and that hooded figure hits him with a claymore, lifts the hood to reveal that it was Drew McIntyre. The belief is Drew McIntyre took out Jay earlier in the night and now took out Sami Zayn to close the show. We fade to black here. What are your thoughts on Drew McIntyre coming back and looking to take out the OG bloodline? Word is it's because they worked with CM Punk at War Games. Again, somebody else who has issues with CM Punk and now has issues with the OG bloodline because they buddied up for this one match. Seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but you get Drew McIntyre back. What are your thoughts?
Also, too, remember that when Drew was fighting for the title, the bloodline always kept interfering, getting him close. Remember, too, I think it was it Drew and Roman at Clash of the Castle?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep. And it was Solo who interfered.
So you have the reason why, kind of tying into the past, what happened. I think Drew McIntyre is a great character, and I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's doing the things he needs to do. He's a main event guy, in my opinion. And for him to go after the OG bloodline. And here's the thing, too, if you want to go, it's fun. Check out the match times. I think I was excited for Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn, but it went less than 12 minutes. A lot of these matches on Raw went less than 12 minutes. I think you might have got like 45 total minutes of wrestling in a 2-hour show, which was crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, that is absolutely bonkers. And again, like you said, coming off of a very wrestling-heavy pay-per-view, prioritizing kind of what's coming next and building towards January 6th where Raw switches to Netflix. I guess that kind of does make sense, but it is a wrestling show. You tune in for wrestling. This is a wrestling podcast, and you tune in for us to talk about wrestling and some rumors. And I've got a rumor for you, and I want to kind of know what you think about this. Becky Lynch has been MIA since she lost her belt to Liv Morgan. Word on the street is she may re-debut on Monday Night Raw on Netflix on January 6th. Monday Night Raw and some of the WWE wrestlers were over at Netflix's headquarters this week. Becky Lynch was in attendance. She did a couple of photo ops. What do you think about Becky Lynch basically coming back to Monday Night Raw, but doing it on January 6th when the move to Netflix is official? Adding a little bit of spice, making it a little bit of a bigger show. Yeah,
I'm curious to see how this new version of Becky Lynch comes back. I mean, it's kind of been a stop and start kind of situation with her family and then, coming back. So we'll see how it plays out more and more. So I'm intrigued. I think she's clearly somebody that, along with Charlotte Flair, you want to see continued evolution of their character. So I'm curious to see what it looks like when she comes back.
Would you have her come back for the January 6th episode, or would you maybe save this or have her maybe debut a little bit early to maybe build a little bit of momentum towards that January 6th show? I could see this going a couple of different ways, right? Like if you debut her early, it allows you the opportunity to highlight a match on January 6th on that program that's going to force people to tune in. Or you could do it after January 6th to kind of keep some of that momentum going after that big initial program, after that big initial debut. You could bring her back later on. Maybe do some sort of vignette where it's like, tune in next week or tune in 2 weeks, and you kind of build that story. How would you prefer to do that? If you had the booking pencil, if you were in charge of creative, would you do her before January 6th? Would you do her on January 6th? Or would you do her debut after?
Oh, it's intriguing, right? I think January 6th is fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's good timing. Look, she's been off of television for a while. She's had a reset now in her career. It's going to be intriguing what she gets involved in. Is it already the title picture? Is it Liv Morgan? Is it, what show? We'll see. But in the end, I do think that Becky's going to add something to the character. But maybe you just add a little flair to the man characters, a little bit more like seriousness, but with a little bit of entertainment as well. Not sure how you do that. Maybe a little bit of snark and commentary about some of these ladies. We'll see how it plays out. But Becky Lynch being gone, it's definitely a noticeable situation. But she's got it. The number one thing to me is what's the angle she's going to be in? What is the character going to look like? And what's her purpose? Like, what's the next version of Becky Lynch going to be about? Because it's kind of been the same for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, she does kind of have to reinvent it a little bit. I do love the man character, but like you said, it's kind of, again, something like with the New Day, right? It's been going and going and going. It's still over. Maybe you freshen it up a little bit. We definitely don't need her to go heel. I think she's a horrible heel, but we'll get it figured out when January 6th comes along, I guess. Switching gears to SmackDown, I thought SmackDown was kind of a pedestrian show. I'll be curious to get your thoughts on what you thought about the SmackDown show. I think the big thing coming out of SmackDown was we now have a new tag team. DIY turns heel. They beat the Motor City Machine Guns. I was pretty upset about this. What do you make about taking the belts off of the Motor City Machine Guns? It feels like it was just 4 weeks ago these guys got the belts. It was probably closer to 6, maybe 8. I thought they were doing a really good job with having the tag team championships and slapping them on DIY. It to me, it seemed rushed. I guess this was a storyline that they've been building. I don't know. I guess I just didn't like this.
That's the best way to put it. That was my note. I didn't like that. I was like, okay, I'm not invested in DIY. I didn't care that they were fighting. I was like, let them implode. Who cares? Ciampa and Gargano have been, given, it feels like, they're one of Triple H's guys, and they keep getting respect and time. And it's like, I would have liked to have seen them just feud with each other, like tell some stories and go down that road. Like, I mean, that's the best thing to do is kind of like tell their story in a way that lets their feuds kind of get attention and do something. But I thought that Motor City Machine Guns run was too short, and you're like, it is confusing because Ciampa, like just beforehand, is pushing Gargano, and then Gargano's in the corner, and Alex Shelley I think is on the top rope, and then all of a sudden, boom, Johnny Gargano hits a member of the Motor City Machine Gun in the nuts, and now you have new champs. You're like, okay, so it was interesting, with Cody Rhodes starting the show, but. That part of the show I was not a fan of. Yeah.
Cody Rhodes starting the show. You weren't a fan of that one, or you weren't a fan of the tag team switch?
No, I wasn't a fan of the tag team switch. It's interesting, to have somebody new talking to Cody and Chad Gable, and then Cody digging on him was cool as hell.
Yeah, I wanted to get your perspective on that. So Chad Gable ends up having a match with Cody Rhodes. I thought it was a pretty good match. I thought that was interesting. It was somebody new getting worked in, and then you had Kevin Owens show up and try to do some more damage to Cody Rhodes' ankle before, what is it, next week we're going to have the Saturday night main event. So building and pushing that right now. Very interesting on SmackDown. They also are talking about this transfer portal thing. So I guess the Raw draft is going to be right around the corner. What do you think? What do you make of that? Them referring to this as a transfer portal, very college football-esque, and guys are kind of politicking to be on different shows right now. I don't think I'm a huge fan of it. I've never really been a huge fan of the draft itself. I usually like when you got a good storyline, you can just kind of bounce back and forth between both shows. It makes both shows a little bit more interesting. What are your thoughts on this transfer portal thing?
Well, being that Michigan State doesn't use the transfer portal as well as maybe
neither does Michigan. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. I don't like that word. It's like it's funny in regards to WWE and their use of popular slang and stuff like that. I think you mentioned.
You know what it sometimes feels like? It sometimes feels like the uncool dad who heard his kid using a word,
Right,
and they're like, "I've got to fit this into a sentence.
Right.
How do I fit the word capping into a sentence?
Right.
Like, you guys be capping. Like, no, Dad, just sit down.
Yeah, exactly. So transfer portal does not need to be used in the world of professional wrestling in any capacity. I just like it to just be organic. Hey, this guy showed, like when Cody Rhodes shows up on Raw, it's pretty cool, and they just say, "Hey, Cody Rhodes is here." That's really cool. You don't have to have a name for it. You don't have to have it's going to be funny. What is LA Knight going to do? I'm going to enter the transfer portal this week. See me on Raw. It's like, okay, bro. Just show up on Raw, do your thing. So I thought the other segment on SmackDown that I really liked, I liked Kevin Owens talking to Michael Cole in the car, I think. It was pretty cool. It was like, I can't believe you just said that, Michael Cole. Here's why you're wrong. And they've done such a great job with Kevin Owens. And then the attack that Kevin Owens had on Cody was really good. And look, man, Kevin Owens continuing to reinvent himself, getting the love and attention he deserves, and man, he definitely sticks out as somebody that's going to be integral in the next year for WWE.
Yeah, most definitely. Was there anything else that stuck out to you from WWE?
Yeah. So now Solo is against Andre and El Idolo. I was like, Solo. What? I was like, huh? That's why I just put that was
or
my
LA
note.
Knight.
Yeah.
He did thumb LA Knight. He did spare Nakamura though.
Yeah, I was like, huh? I was like, okay. Solo's like, now I got to come back and take down the mid-carders. I was like, well, what are you going to do? Because the dark match on Raw was Solo and Cody. And I think somebody pointed out that like Solo's like 0-20 against Cody. So it's like, there's no belief anymore. So that is kind of the other side of it, is that when the Bloodline 2.0 loses, now what's next? Well, we got to attack from within. And it's like, okay, do what you got to do. And it's like, what did Solo do? Did he piss in someone's soup bowl that's a writer? Because they lose the tag belts earlier to Motor City Machine Guns. They lose War Games. And now Solo has to fight Andrade and the mid-carder. So it's going to be interesting to see what the purpose is and what's next for the second OG. What's going to happen next for the second Bloodline, because there's a chance for redemption or some more chaos. But we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, and switching gears to AEW, what I feel is very much this new Bloodline is this C2, this Continental Challenge, this Continental Classic. Dynamite's been completely built around this for the last 2 weeks, and to me, it's just underwhelming. I kind of want to know what your interest is, because it feels very mid-card to me. It feels like a very mid-card tournament, and some of the rules included with it just don't make sense. Like, Okada is in it, and while he's in it, he is still actively defending his belt. So if anybody challenges him for it, he actively defends his belt. His belt is on the line in this tournament, and he could make it to the finals where he wouldn't be able to defend his championship because he doesn't have enough points because he didn't make it to the finals. To me, it's way over thought out, and there's just not enough star power in it. What are your thoughts on the Continental Classic or the Continental Challenge, the C2 as they're calling it, with AEW?
I'm not a fan of it. I never was. I think, yeah, like you said, it's too overbooked. It's convoluted, points, all this kind of thing. Look, man, I get it. WWE and AEW rely on tournaments when there's a plethora. Like the best thing is WWE's, we're going to have a tournament for the number one contender. It's like, yeah, you could have did the same thing by just building up some of these guys, just have the matches. It seems like, Nakamura has been on a hot streak. What's next for him? Then he shows up and wins a title. So something like that. You don't need tournaments, but, it's for Tony Khan. I think we talked about it last year. There's probably this kind of fascination with New Japan and the G1 Classic and tournaments that indicate, hey, but here's the deal. Tournament winners then go on to kind of go underwhelm moving forward. It does not as special. So you have the Owen Hart Classic. You have the C2 now. It's just one of those deals where I get it. You want to have something like that signifies that somebody stands out over it and now they get a belt. but the guy that has the belt has been turned into a funny man that just says bitch. So what does it really mean? Because in the end, it just devalues the tournament where the guy came from.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. 100%. And here's the thing. The one good thing about this tournament is you will get some good matches. I thought the Kyle Fletcher Shelton Benjamin match was fantastic, right? I thought Claudio was getting a nice push as he had a really nice match at the end of the night. The problem is the overall structure of it, right? What this is supposed to get you to, like you said, just convoluted, overbooked. It doesn't necessarily make sense. There's no reason Okada should be in this. This should be for the number one contender for that belt. If you really want to make that belt feel special, everybody has to go through this tournament to be named the number one contender to challenge for it. And Okada should be made to feel special. He should be that toy that you get on Christmas. He's that last gift underneath the tree that you open up and you absolutely go ballistic and lose your mind about. But he's not. You're right. He's a funny man who says bitch, and his matches have been mid, if that. So his matches being mid, he's now mid. He's in this very mid-card challenge, this mid-card tournament. It is what it is. And for me, quite frustrating what AEW does with their regular programming. Again, they tend to hit it out of the park, and they do a very good job with their pay-per-views. But their weekly programming is just hard to get through, man. A lot of it's just background noise for me a lot of the time.
Yeah, and as you brought up the Christmas reference, it's kind of like the deal where the rich kid gets the toy and he's like, wow, I got the Transformer. Look, it talks, it transforms. I push the button. He plays with it for 10 minutes, and then he's like, I want another toy. And the kid's like, huh? Kid, you want to go shopping again? Like, play with your toy. And you're like, no. And then what's funny is, as a parent, I think you'll realize it, and maybe I'll give you the free advice here over the air. It's funny. You get all these kids, fun toys, all the bells and whistles, and then they find a pencil that they get infatuated with for 2 weeks. And you're like, we spent $80 on this thing, and the kid wants to flip around with a pencil. And you're like, oh, Daddy, I love the pencil. Thank you. And you're like, honey, she would have enjoyed the pencil, not have to spend the $120 on this thing that you got. And it's funny, too, because that's kind of how Tony Khan is. Ooh, I got Okada. I got him for 2 weeks. Let's have a great match. Ooh, he's with the Young Bucks. And then 2 weeks later, let's go get Will Ospreay. Oh, I got Will Ospreay. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, okay, I'm done with him. And then he's the next guy. Ooh, I got Bobby Lashley. And then he's like, ooh. It's like, oh, okay. You can go back to your toys and you can play with them and refurbish them and actually make them fun and play with them together. Like, hey, gather up all these things that you got that are great and make them special, make them awesome, make them worthwhile instead of just keep buying more and more and more toys. It's really crazy.
Yeah, he is like Thanos, and they are like Infinity Stones to him. He just keeps collecting them. But to give you a little insight, I already have that happening. We will go out, we'll buy her toys that are supposed to help with her development and stuff that is supposed to keep her entertained for hours and supposed to do different stuff, whether it's with teething or whether it's with hand-eye movements or helping her sit or stand and all these things. And then you get an Amazon package and you take the item out of the envelope and you set the envelope down next to her. Next thing you know, she's playing with the envelope for 3.5 hours and it's now made its way into her playpen because she loves it. So, yeah, man, I'm already there. Simple, weird things she finds the most interesting, and she has the most fun with those, while she has very complex toys that are supposed to help her with her development and learning. She much rather wave an envelope around and put her hands inside the envelope. So it's what it is. So what was your show of the week this week?
No doubt it was SmackDown. Best show of the week. Concise. A lot of interesting angles and some wrestling, which is a little bit better than Raw. Raw was entertaining, but SmackDown was the best.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go the opposite direction. I'm gonna go Raw. I thought Raw with the New Day special, I thought they did a really, really good job. I think it opens the book that if Big E is cleared, we are going to get some fantastic storylines. I thought they did a decent enough job setting quite a few things up. On top of that, it was bookended with Drew McIntyre revealing that he is back. So I'm going to go Raw this week. Either way you cut it, I think you pick a WWE product, I think you're going to be incredibly happy this week, whether it's Raw or SmackDown. Would you like some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So on the heels of WWE's War Games at Survivor Series, we've got a couple of banged up bodies. Big Bronson Reed is dealing with a broken foot after doing a splash onto a table in the match. There was a point where, if you go on the internet, you can find it. It was highlighted and blown up where his foot just kind of went sideways. The rest of his body went inside. His foot went outside, and they've got copies of the x-ray. His foot is mangled. Jimmy Uso also got hurt doing a splash onto Jacob Fatu. He broke his toe. Tungaloa has a torn bicep. And Raquel Rodriguez, she is probably the best for the wear. She got a few stitches in her left elbow from her match. I think she did like an Instagram video showing herself getting the stitches. And then, do we have another WWE announced team shakeup? In a report from USA Today, Triple H let the cat out of the bag and revealed that there are plans for Pat McAfee to return to the Raw commentary team full-time while speaking during a media event at Netflix headquarters this week. Triple H said, letting the cat out of the bag a little bit right now, Pat actually about to come back with us here full-time on Monday Night Raw. McAfee stated that McAfee will be back with Michael Cole, who is currently serving as the commentator on SmackDown along with Corey Graves. So Cole and McAfee will be on Raw. You'll have Tessitore and Barrett on SmackDown, and Graves will probably be back on SmackDown, but he also might be the third man on Raw to help with McAfee. It's a little bit confusing on what's going to happen with Corey Graves, and really, for that matter, what's going to happen with Wade Barrett. Because Graves could slide over to SmackDown and they could figure out something else to do with Wade Barrett, or you could have a three-man booth on SmackDown, or you could have a three-man booth on Monday Night Raw. Either way, we'll get it figured out, getting closer to the January 6th shakeup where Monday Night Raw moves to Netflix. And speaking of Raw moving to Netflix, there are some changes coming to WWE as they make that shift to Netflix, and it could be for the better. According to PW Insider, highly placed WWE sources confirm that the plan is for WWE Raw to air live whenever it is taping. For instance, if Raw is taping in the UK, it will stream live across the platform simultaneously, regardless of the time it may be in the United States. Something else that was clarified is the show will stream live as it happens and then be available via on-demand ASAP as it goes off the air, very similar to what takes place on Peacock. WWE Raw began streaming live on Netflix on January 6th on 2025. So I think that's kind of cool. Something a little bit different. There's been a lot of times where WWE would do these international shows and you've got to wait. You got to wait until 8 o'clock to watch Monday Night Raw. You got to wait till 8 o'clock to watch SmackDown. Well, what's going to happen is now if they're in India and they're taping, or if they're in the UK and they're taping, or if they're anywhere else in the world and they're taping, you can watch it as it's taking place. You don't have to wait for it to get edited down, packaged, and then sent over and then watch it at 8 o'clock. You can watch it early so you are ahead of the game. So when they send out all the stuff that's kind of breaking and everybody's like, oh, well, this is what took place, all the spoilers, you already know what's gone on. I think that's a really, really cool thing. It's something different. For guys like us, if we have the free time, we'll watch it. It'll save us from having to hang out till 8 o'clock at night to watch it when we could be doing something else with our kids or with our family, and it'll help us sometimes package a show up a little bit earlier. So I'm all for it. I think it's great. Anything that can help expedite what we've got going on, I'm all about it. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Yes, and something else that caught my attention, I really was intrigued by Matt Cardona showing up on Ring of Honor to face Chris Jericho at the Hammerstein Ballroom. I think that that's going to be really intriguing. Saturday night's main event next week is really interesting as well. So it's going to be fun to see how this plays out. And really interesting, which I thought would go in a different direction. Eric Bischoff on NXT drew a bad rating. So that's interesting. So we'll see how it plays out because he's definitely been an outspoken critic of AEW, but you know, we'll see if these one-offs with Eric Bischoff continue. He's doing stuff with MLW. But it was kind of like one of those deals with Eric Bischoff that blast from the past. It was a good segment, but not one of the best. So good week of wrestling. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSCROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thank you for subscribing anywhere that you listen to your favorite audio content. Hit Detroit Sports Podcast, and you'll find us. Like and subscribe. We appreciate your listenership. I can't wait to fire it up next week on Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.